In honor of the upcoming release of the live-action Beauty and the Beast, I thought this month, for our book review, we're going to go ahead and review an expanded universe story about the trials and tribulations that the dinnerware goes through during the big Be Our Guest sequence. It is hopefully going to be spun off into a Netflix series, and it is called Be Our Guest, Perfecting the Art of Customer Service. Okay, this has nothing to do with Beauty and the Beast, but it's pretty good timing, right? Hello everybody and welcome to another Disney book review. This is a series where I pick various Disney books that I've read in the past and talk about them from the perspective of a Disney fan. You know, I've mentioned this in other episodes and I want to mention this in every episode in case this is your first, but I'm not a literary reviewer. I don't, read books and review them based on how well written they are or what the story's like. In fact, most, if not all of these are nonfiction anyway, but I like to approach these videos from the perspective of a Disney fan, and I like to tell you guys what these books offer as a Disney fan so you could know whether or not it's something worth picking up for you. And this week, we are talking about Be Our Guest, Perfecting the Art of Customer Service. It is put out by the Disney Institute. If you've never heard of them before, the Disney Institute is essentially an organization that teaches other organizations how to be more like Disney. You know, Disney is so world-renowned for its customer service and for its processes as a company that other companies around the world seek them out for advice on how to do it. And so this book is sort of like an offshoot of that. It's a tough one to review because here's what I'll say. Be Our Guest totally nails what it sets out to do. And for that reason, I don't suggest people pick this up and read it. This is very much a short, easy sales pitch for the Disney Institute. It's about 200 pages. It is really, I can show you here. It is not, it's kind of big type. I flew through this book and yet at points it felt like it took way too long to read because it was a very dry book. And I guess that's where I should go into this. What it sets out to do, like I said, it's sort of a short sales pitch for the Disney Institute, but it sets out to give a higher view of sort of the Disney way of looking at things when it comes to running a company. And while that might sound interesting on paper, it certainly was to me. I'm a big fan of, Disney as the company, not just Disney as the entertainer. It does so in a way that doesn't provide a ton of details because you could tell that this is essentially meant to be like a stepping stone for companies that are going to eventually use the Disney Institute, or in some cases, maybe this would just be a very light version of the Disney Institute for smaller companies who couldn't maybe afford to use the Disney Institute. But as far as like teaching you about Disney, it doesn't do a whole lot. Like they'll talk about, what they have this compass that sort of encompasses how they run their organization, what thoughts go into making decisions. And they'll go into the various elements of that compass and they'll justify why they do it and how it works. But you're not going to get a ton of rich details into how that goes into effect with their rides. In fact, this book, because I guess it is meant to be for companies that are getting into the Disney Institute, isn't written for Disney fans. It is written for people who are assumed to have no knowledge of Disney as a company or as the person. So while there is a lot of like little history of the company sprinkled in there, it's the kind of stuff you're gonna find in any other like Disney history book out there. It's all stuff we've heard about Walt and his daughters and the carousel, and that's being the idea for Disneyland, or about people thinking that Disneyland would be dirty and gross, and that's why he wanted to make one, is because his wouldn't be. Like that sort of base level stuff that you would find in a Walt biography is what you'd find in here. Outside of that stuff, it is really just corporate babble about, setting up processes and customer satisfaction. And, I guess maybe it seems silly in retrospect to like think that there would be more than that in this book, because like I said at the beginning, this book achieves its goal. It sets out to do what it set out to do. I was just maybe perhaps hoping that there'd be more hidden in there. I was hoping for like really cool detailed facts about, how they do something that I have experienced as a customer but never saw on the other side. And they don't really have a ton of that in there. For example, one of the things they talk about is explosion points. And it's this idea of trying to find points in your process as a company where there's going to be a lot of issues with customers or just with, you know, getting the process from A to B and trying to smooth them out so they don't become big problems. And they use as an example the lines at Disneyland. This is a thing that nobody likes. Nobody likes standing in line, so it's always going to be a pain point. And so how do you mitigate it? And, you know, they'll mention that. They'll mention that it's for them, it's the lines. They'll mention that they have to do something about it. And maybe they'll throw out a couple of lines about, you know, interactive cues. And that's about it. Like, you don't get into real details for things they might do to mitigate the pain point of having to wait in line. And so if you're going into this book hoping to find like juicy little details as to how they run the parks, you're not really going to find it. You're really just going to see this overarching view of how Disney as a company works, which I think any Disney fan who does Disney reading will already know. And so for that reason, as much as this book does what it sets out to do, I can't recommend it if you're looking for a Disney book to read. I mean, certainly if you're the kind of person who's read everything that's out there already and you need something else, sure, why not? Go for it. But if you're still building that Disney library, put this one off towards the end, if at all. And like I said, it's also very dryly written. You know, there were parts where I had to struggle and force myself to keep reading because it just wasn't exciting to read. And I am the kind of person who loves to read the boring business stuff when it comes to Disney. So I'm not saying that as somebody who's expecting a bunch of magic in this book. Anyway, that's just my thoughts. I would love to hear what you guys think about the book. You can let me know in the comments below. You can let me know on Twitter. Because I'm not suggesting people get this book, how about in the comments, people leave suggestions for books that Disney fans should get? So you can leave that in the comments below as well. I want to thank you all for watching. If you want to see more Disney videos like this, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button. I make 3 a week. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
I love it.